All right, today's story takes us back to Delmar Hills Elementary School when I was in about, I want to say 5th or 6th grade. Let's go with 6th grade. So I'm in 6th grade, and one thing that me and Joel and my friend Jeff, and then our other friend Nate Wagner, who I haven't told you as much about, he was sort of like the 4th friend from elementary school, but really Joel and Jeff were the ones that were like my friends all the way through. So we would play soccer every single lunch period on the field. And basically what we would do is we would grab a soccer ball and it would just be 2-on-2. And we'd be in the penalty box and it would be like me and Nate versus Jeff and Joel, or sometimes it'd be me and Jeff against Joel and Nate or whatever. And we would just switch off. So we would just play every recess, every recess, every recess, every recess. Well, at some point, this boy who's like maybe in 3rd grade, so he was younger than us, started sitting behind the goal and just watching us. He never said anything to us. He just sat there and watched. And we play and we play and we play. And the next day, he'd sit there and he'd watch. And we play and we play and play. And the next day, he'd sit there and he'd watch. And we're like, who is this boy? And then we found out that he was actually a German exchange student. So he didn't really speak English. And he would just sit there and watch. He probably, didn't know anybody yet. And he was younger than us, but he loved soccer, right? And so he would watch us play. But I'll never forget, one day we were playing, and I don't know whose team Nate Wagner was on, but he got really upset. Maybe a play happened that didn't go well, or he was losing or something like that. And I just remember he went over and he started yelling at the boy. He started saying, "Why do you come here and watch us every single day? Don't you have your own life? We're just trying to play soccer. Why don't you get out of here and go watch somebody else or do something else with your life?" And I remember just being like, whoa, where is this coming from, right? The kid's just sitting there. And I just remember the kid standing up and like walking away or maybe even running away. And I was like, looked at Nate Wagner, I'm like, shocked. And I remember I didn't say anything to Nate because I didn't know what to say. But I remember in my heart just feeling so bad for this kid and hurt to have seen this like outpouring of negativity. I wish I had said something back then. I wish I had been strong enough to go up to Nate and be like, hey, I don't think we needed to be mean to that kid. And in some ways, I kind of wish I was strong enough to have invited the kid to play with us, even though he would have brought the game down. It would have been 3-on-2 or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I wish that I had like the ability to reach out. But why didn't I? I think the reason I didn't is because it wasn't like cool. It wasn't easy. I already had my way of doing things, and my way of doing things was pretty great. And putting this other kid into it might have ruined it. Well, fast forward in my life, I have a family, I have 2 kids, and my wife really, really wants to have foster children. She grew up in her family. She has 2 brothers and her. And they had a series of different foster kids that their parents took in. So she had these sisters who would share her room. Sometimes they would be there for a couple months, sometimes up to a year. And she had all these foster kids. And it sounded really, really hard. And she was pretty honest about the fact that it was hard at times because she had to share her room. Oftentimes the foster kids were pretty, angry at times and so on and so forth. So it was really, really hard for her. But she wanted to do that in her life as well. So we talked about it a long time because if you're going to do something like that, you need to make sure you're on the same page. And we went through a whole series of classes and we eventually were accredited to become foster parents. Our first foster child was a wonderful kid, really, really energetic. He was with us for about a month. His mother was having problems with the legal system, so she was in jail and trying to deal with it. And so her kid got taken away and he came to us. And it went really, really well. It was hard, but it went really well. So he went back to his mom, which was great. His mom was really hard to interact with, though. She yelled at me a couple times just because she was angry, right? Our next foster kid was emotionally disturbed. We did not know he was emotionally disturbed when he came to us. And when he came to us, he actually changed his name. He told us, actually, my name is Christopher. But we're like, that's not what it says on the sheet. And he's like, no, that's my name. We're like, okay, we'll go with that. And what was really hard about that is he had so much bad stuff happen in his life that it was really hard for him to attend school. It was really hard for him to fit into our family. There were times literally where he was doing things that were dangerous, and I would tell him, like, you have to stop doing that or I have to call the police. And he would just keep on doing it. And I would call the police. And he would just keep on doing it. It didn't matter. There were times where I would say, like, you have to get in the car, we're going home. And he was so angry, he would just walk down the street. And I'd be like driving next to him, like, Christopher, get in the car. And he would just refuse to. And I could tell him, I'm gonna call the police, I can't get you in my car. And it didn't matter. Our third foster kid, and you're like, well, what happened to the second one? The second one was, at some point it got so hard that we had to tell the county, like, we can't do it anymore. Like, we're not able to give him what he needs. He needs to be somewhere else. And it was super, super hard to admit that we were essentially failing. Really hard to admit. So it took us a while to get over that, but eventually we ended up with a third foster kid. And this foster kid came in, and there was some stuff going on with her dad being homeless, and he was trying to get her back. He was a wonderful man, but he struggled with addiction. And we were really hopeful that it would be a short-term thing, and then he would do everything he needed to do and be able to take care of her again. But it ended up turning into an entire year. And eventually we got to the point where we were getting super tired. She was wonderful, but it was really hard for her to do school. It was really hard for her to pay attention. She had a lot of learning issues, and she would sometimes just get super distracted. Like sometimes she'd be taking a shower, and we'd look at our watch and we'd realize that she'd been in the shower for 30 minutes, and we would go to the door and she was sitting down in the shower, just playing in the tub. And we'd be like, you gotta get out, you can't just sit in the tub with the shower going the whole time. And we told her this over and over and over again, but she would just keep on doing it, okay? Eventually what happened is the county found, actually we kind of found it because she told us about it a little bit, and we told the county, found out that she had a grandmother who actually wanted to be in touch with her, but had lost touch because she was the grandmother on the mom's side, and there was no mom in the picture at all. And so the county actually set it up with a grandmother to take this kid in. So after a year, she went there. I tell you these stories because it's connected to that story to the German boy that watched us. And it was in some ways a tale of redemption, where when I was a kid, they're not directly correlated. It's just the difference between being a kid and being an adult. When I was a kid, I didn't know how to be an ally. I didn't know how to sacrifice my own comfort and my own way of doing things in order to help somebody that was drastically different and maybe needed some help. But when we did this with foster kids, we were taking a family that was functioning in a certain way and putting in a whole other variable that was really, really uncomfortable, right? And I would have to say, in general, while it was really hard, the person who I feel like learned a lot from that experience was me. And I'm sure that the other members of my family hopefully would say that they learned a lot from it too, even though it was really hard. Thanks for listening.